interactive, engaging. It's like part masterclass, part energy, part mindset coaching, and then workshop. So I like combining all these elements because I think it's the most effective way of sharing the information. So feel free to share in the chat where you're joining from. And I want to pop in with some questions. So the first question is just, are you a business owner? I think everybody on this call is right now, but across the people who are watching the recording, yes, Evan, love it. Okay. Do you identify as having ADHD? So this isn't like a prerequisite, but the reason I ask is because something I discovered when I was diagnosed with ADHD is a lot of the systems and strategies that I developed for myself were coping mechanisms for my ADHD. So a lot of the things that like I bring into the world as my unique zone of genius were actually adapted from like those being struggles for me in the past. So we are neurodivergent friendly. And then this is a reflection question. Feel free to write it down if that's helpful for you. Share it in the chat. What are your main frustrations about how your time is currently being spent for work, right? So for some people, it is, I've got a full client load. I have no time to spend on my own business, like marketing or developing new services and products. Is that something that you're frustrated with? Or are you feeling like you're spinning your wheels and you're not getting anywhere? Do you feel like you can't focus when you're actually sitting down to work? What's going on for you during your work time? Anybody want to share in the chat? You haven't had time to finish writing. There we go. Okay, I find that once I finish a big project, something I chunk down, I get stuck on my next steps. Okay, can you describe that a little bit more, Jen? Like, so you've finished the project, you just don't know what to do with the project once it's done? And everything's when you start to focus.
Do you want me to unmute or write in the chat?
No, unmute.
Just, like let's say I'm working on like messaging for a launch or something, or I need to send emails out. A lot of times I'll get stuck on, okay, I've got to send this email out. What do I say? Like, I don't know. I just feel more stuck when I'm moving from project to project. Okay. It's an ADHD thing, yeah, to be sure.
yeah. It transitions for sure. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then Evan is easily distracted, hard to focus, and can't get your own business work done. I feel that. Okay, so we're gonna do a poll. You can drop a 1 in the chat if you get to the end of the week and consistently feel like, okay, I don't know where the time went. I had all these things I wanted to do. I feel like I didn't get them done. What did I spend my time doing? Is that you? Yeah. Okay. Got it. Second question, drop a 2 in the chat if you feel like you're consistently chasing your to-do list. So you've got a to-do list, you're like, I've got it all written down, it's in my project management system, or it's on a notepad, or whatever, but I'm not actually getting it done, or I check something off and 5 more things are added to it. Yeah, because to-do lists are helpful, but they're not super helpful if it's just a giant list staring at us, for sure. Drop a 3 if you feel guilt around the amount of time you're spending working versus the time you're spending with your family and friends. And so this could be that work is taking you away from your family, or it could be that work and the stress associated with work is impacting how you're showing up with your family, how you're showing up in your home life, your ability to really experience joy when you're with your family because your mind is spinning, thinking about things on the back end with business. Drop a 3 in the chat if that's happening for you. Yeah. I've definitely had days where this happens for me too. Okay. Good question. Something to reflect on and think about. How would you prefer to feel about your work time? So if you could get to the end of your work day or the end of your work week and reflect on how things went. Like, what feeling do you want to feel? Right? I had somebody accomplished. Yeah. Yeah. I think that is the most common that I hear, that you're moving forward. Yeah. One that came up when I taught this in person locally recently was, I just want to feel like I did enough. You know, I want to feel like I can stop now because I did enough. Yeah, maximize your work time for sure. For sure. Okay. So we're going to dig into all of that today. But first, I want to share a little bit for those of you who are new to me, which there are a lot of people who register that are new to my world. Who am I? Like, why am I even qualified to be here talking to you about this? My name is Heather. I am a life and business strategist and an energy healer. I'll talk about that more, but it's kind of a big umbrella. I've got 18 years of project management experience, and 13 of those were in corporate America, in the architecture, construction, and corporate real estate world. So my role as a project manager was to take company A, make sure they get relocated to new space B, and everything from site selection all the way through move-in. So management of all the vendors, the budget, the schedule, contracts, like all of those pieces. So it was those projects were big undertakings, multi-million dollars worth of budget managed on each one. And I thrived in it, right? Like my brain just somehow takes those big monsters and is able to filter them down into communicable plans of how we're going to execute. About 4.5 years ago, I went out on my own, started my own business as a pediatric sleep consultant, got my feet wet in the entrepreneurial space, and then roughly around 2 years ago, pivoted my business into what I'm doing now, which is DIY, done with you and done for you services in the kind of life, business strategies, project management, business strategy space. So first and foremost, as a human, I'm a wife and a mom. That's my number one priority. It's a big basis behind this workshop and why I'm so passionate about this topic. And then I'm also a late in life diagnosed ADHD woman. So I was diagnosed last year after suspecting for a couple of years. I've got a family history with ADHD. My daughter has ADHD. We're a big neurospicy family over here. And then I've also created a 90-day planner called the CS2 90-day planner. I'm a certified Reiki master, and I'm also a project manager for small business owners. So kind of a lot of little things, definitely fits into the ADHD umbrella, but ultimately I'm just really passionate about simplifying those big overwhelming things for other business owners so that they can focus on just doing the thing and spending more time experiencing what life really is all about, right? Which is the wonder and the joy and spending time with the people we love. Like, nobody ends up on their deathbed wishing they'd worked harder. They end up thinking about things like, I spend so much time working, I wish I'd spent more time with my family, I wish I'd been more present with my kids when they were growing up. So that is what drives me. So our goals for today, first, identifying how our current productivity and time management patterns are impacting you. So that's why I was asking these questions at the beginning. I really wanted you to reflect on, like, what do you want to get out of this class? What do you want to shift? Where are you today? And then we're going to do a little bit of energy clearing. I know Evan knows this about me with Reiki energy clearing. If you're not familiar, I can do that virtually here over the Zoom. Even the folks who are watching the recording will benefit from it. It's channeled for me, so I will just share what comes up as I go. And then we're going to shift into learning about why shifting our perception and our mindset around time will make a difference in changing our current patterns. Because really, we can try to shift things, but until we believe that it's possible for us to change these patterns, it's going to be very difficult to actually change them. And then we're going to dive into the workshop component where you downloaded that workbook, and we're going to work through it. I'm going to share some recommendations for things that I have found helpful, that my clients have found helpful, and you'll walk away with your own time well plan that's unique to you and your business and life. Okay, so I'm going to turn off my camera because it's kind of weird for me to channel when people are staring at me, for me personally. And then I just want you to get in a comfortable position. If you'd rather lay down, you can do that. Some deep breaths with me. Inhale all the way into your belly. Allow yourself to really sink in to your heart space. This is your gentle reminder that you're doing enough. You're already doing all the right things. You already know exactly what you need to do for your business and for your life. We're just going to talk today about some strategies for how to optimize that. We're going to shift those beliefs around, I don't have enough time, that you are feeling abundant this time. There is more than enough time. And that you can have time freedom too. True wealth is not about money, it's not about things. True wealth is about freedom to live the life we want to be living. To be fully present. To be taking care of ourselves. And to be able to focus on the things that bring us joy. As we work through this masterclass, if there's anything activates you, anything that feels hard, make note of it. That's where our biggest lessons come from. Feel free to ask questions. I'm happy to help you work through any of those limiting beliefs. You are more than enough. You are worthy. You are everything you deserve. Take another deep breath with me. As you feel ready, open your eyes. I never know what I'm going to say when I do those channel drains and energy clearings. It's just whatever comes through. So if anything resonated with you, I would love for you to share in the chat. How you're feeling. Yes, I'm so glad you loved it. Okay. I always like to start there, right? We've got to clear out anxiety, stress, all of that before we get started with this other work, right? So here is where we're going to dig into the masterclass piece, and I'm going to go all the way back and talk about time over time. So the before clock days, something that's really important to remember and to think back on from those before clock days is that we lived in cycles and rhythms, right? According to seasons, according to day and night, and we operated as task-oriented beings. So if you think about task-oriented beings, the best way to think about that is as a baby, right? Babies are very much like, I'm hungry, I will eat now. I'm tired, I will sleep now. Hopefully, if you've got a baby that sleeps well, I want to play, right? So they start playing. That's exactly how humans operated before we had clocks and schedules and appointments and, multiple competing priorities. And so back in those days, humans didn't feel the same type of anxiety about needing to get more done, right? It was not the same. I have to get more done. I've got this huge to-do list. So that we just have somebody else join. Let me just take a little pause. Hi, Kendi. Thank you for joining. We are just diving into kind of the history of time, but you'll get a link to the recording if you want to jump back to the beginning afterwards. But anyway, the feeling of anxiety that we have today, it was not the same back then, right? Because farmers, for example, their work was infinite and it was ongoing, and each task always determined the next amazing things. And they're able to think of lots of ideas of things to do and ways that we could be spending our time. So we tend to have a lot of ideas, and we tend to have a lot of wants of how to be spending our time. And so what I really focus with people on is the first priority of visioning and goal setting. Like, what really do you want from your life? And then what goals drive that? And then we talk about prioritizing, right? Like, what needs to happen first? We create boundaries in our lives to support those priorities so you can focus. And then we move into creating the daily structure, the weekly structure that's going to help you actually implement. So that's something I want you to think about as we move through this masterclass. It's like, we got to start here with where all the things are, and we'll drill down. And that's a big part of the workshop that we made in just a little bit. Hustle culture. Drop hustle in the chat if this is how you were raised. Because I know it was how I was raised. It's this pressure that you've got to fit more into your days. You're always doing more, and then glorifying how busy we are. You're not busy, you're lazy. And so we get stuck in this perpetual cycle, right? Like activated nervous system, high stress, dysregulation, and that's praised. That's praised in corporate America. For those of you who are in the US, like the people that are constantly doing all this stuff all the time, like that is what's glorified. And the people who want to move at a slower pace and just want to focus on their job, that's seen as like you're not a go-getter, right? And so we're going to flip all that upside down because that's not how it needs to be, especially now that we own our own businesses. So for time theory, this was a huge mental shift for me a few years ago. I was reading Big Leap by Dave Hendricks. I don't know who here has read it. There was one component of that book that jumped out at me and just smacked me upside the head and shifted my perception of time forever. And that is that our current society thinks about time based on Newtonian time. And that's the thought that time is absolute and it exists independently from us. It can only be understood mathematically. It's this measurable, 60 minutes in an hour, 12 hours in a day type thing, right? And it exists outside of its relationship to physical events. So you should really consider it more like a backdrop to your world as opposed to something you can interact with and affect. What I love more is thinking about time like Einstein's theory of time, which is that time is not absolute, that it is relative. So obviously, we wouldn't have calendars and clocks if time wasn't measurable. But with the theory of time that Einstein developed, it's really that you can affect how time passes for you, and that it's really an illusion. So the rate at which it passes depends upon your frame of reference. And this is so true if you think about things like how long did it feel like it took to get from one birthday to the next when you were a kid? Or how long does it take for your children? Like as they're leading up to their birthday, it feels like a million years, right? Whereas for us, it feels like it just pops up out of nowhere. Or perhaps when you're doing really boring tasks that you hate doing, it doesn't take forever, right? Whereas if you're doing something you love, it feels like time flies. And that is really speaking to Einstein's theory of time. And so when we think about time, that we can affect the way time moves, it does go faster as we get older. It does. Every year it speeds up. We just slow it down a little bit. And so that's something to consider, right? When we're thinking about how we're using our time, we really want to use it in a way that's most meaningful for us. So the mindset shift around this is that we have all the time we need for the things that matter. And that's where it comes back to, are we prioritizing or are we on the hamster wheel, right? And if we're prioritizing and creating boundaries and structure around our time, then we do. We have all the time that we need for the things that truly matter. So I want to bust some myths, things that I've just heard in the online space over the years, or things that I've personally dealt with. And one is that I can do more. And this was always me. Raise your hand, or not if you're on video, you can drop it in the chat. Always feeling like, yes, I can take that on. I can add that to my list. Or when we're in corporate, I always had all these ideas for things we could do. And I was always thinking on more that's outside of like my actual job function. And so what I've shifted to is that the goal is that we're maximizing our impact, not putting more on our plate. I always tell my clients, like, I'm not going to put more on your plate. Our goal is taking things off and focusing on the things that matter, right? Like the high impact tasks. I'm going to dive into that in more detail a little bit later. 2 is that sleep. I'll just wake up early. Oh, this always makes me like grit my teeth when I hear people say it. I'll just wake up 2 hours early and get even more done at like 4 a.m. Or I'll stay up in the morning and that's all fit extra stuff in. And especially for those of us who are neurodivergent, but really humans in general, we know that when we are sacrificing sleep, we're sacrificing executive function. And when we sacrifice executive function, we are less effective during those work hours. So that means our brain processing speed slows down, our decision making gets more difficult. So you might be working more hours, but are you actually getting those high priority things accomplished, or are you struggling because your brain is not working at full capacity? So we are not sacrificing sleep. Okay, the third is that I can multitask, right? I know I was raised in my childhood, multitasking was like the new time management productivity hack, right? Like, you can do 8 things at once, and that's how we get more done. And the research actually shows this is completely a myth. Our brains can only actually focus on one given thing at any time. But what we can do is we can streamline our routines, we can habit stack, like Evan is on her treadmill right now while listening to this, right? Like that's one way you can get more done by multitasking, because the treadmill is not taking cognitive function, so she can still focus on what we're doing here. When I talk about multitasking, we're not like watching a webinar, replying to emails, creating social media content. Like that is not actually going to be effective. And instead, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on one thing, get it checked off, focus on the next thing, and get it checked off. Okay, and then 4 is asking for help is weak. So I know for all of us Westerners, this is a big challenge for us. I don't know how it is elsewhere in the world. So if you are in other parts of our world, I'm curious culturally if this is something you guys deal with. But notoriously, as Americans, we feel like we have to do everything ourselves. We really distanced ourselves from that like tribal community-based mentality. And so even when people offer support, we say no. We don't ask our partners for support. We feel like we have to do everything. Yeah, Jen, because we've been taught that like you shouldn't ever ask for help. You should be able to do it all. And it's so wild to me because it's not how it's been like throughout history. We've always lived in communities and supported each other, especially as moms. And so we need to normalize asking for help, right? Like there was a situation the other day where I had something that had been on my list for 3 weeks and I just could not get myself to do it. I do not know why. And I just said, hey, husband, like, can you please do this because I need to do it, but I can't get my brain to do it. And he did it, and it was done that day, right? And that's all it takes. Even for marketing this masterclass, I reached out to some of my friends, like, hey, do you mind sharing it? And that is how we build community. That's how we build bonds. So let's normalize that. So our new thought here is that we have to slow down so that we can speed up. We can't keep hustling. We can't keep going, adding more to our plate. We have to stop, slow down, assess, evaluate, which is what we're doing here. And then once you've got a plan, you can go gangbusters. You can execute, pound the pavement, do all the things. But we've got to first like take an assessment and figure out where we're even going. Okay, so grab your workbook. We're going to start the workshop portion, and feel free as you're working through this to comment, to come off mute if you need help. The first page is your brain note. So I want you to think through the questions. What are your weekly work activities? What are your monthly work activities? Yeah, Jen, right? Like, we've got to get clear. I have a friend that just posted recently to her stories that she has been in hustle mode, right, for her business growing. And she was feeling super burnt out, but she felt like she couldn't stop. And her business coach said, no, like, take time off. Go take time off. Enjoy life. And now she's back at work this week, and she's like, I am so creative. I'm getting so much done. Like, this is amazing. And it's just further proof that, like, if we are just nonstop, it's hard for us to keep going at that same capacity. It's hard for us to be our best selves in our business and in our life. So Okay, so we're gonna bring down the weekly and monthly work activities. Think through everything, right? Is it social media content? What client work are you doing on a consistent basis? What marketing are you doing? What networking are you doing? Invoicing, like all the administrative tasks, bookkeeping, filing taxes, like what are the things that you have to do to keep your business running? Okay, and then I want you to also think about in your personal life, what are those tasks that you do weekly, monthly for family or your house or if you have pets, that you know are on your plate, right? We're just gonna get it all out. Let me know when you guys are ready for me to move on.
Heather, can you help me with this?
Yeah. What questions do you have?
So, all right, let's just start with the work activity. So, for example, obviously, like my client work varies.
Yeah.
The amount of hours I spend doesn't necessarily vary.
Yeah.
So, like, how do I list that out? Do I just list out like X amount of hours a month or a week, or?
So that's what I will do because part of what we're going to do is figure out, okay, based on the number of client hours you have, what does that look like if it's broken out across weeks? So,
Okay.
so I would just write out like your client name and how many hours you dedicate to them every month.
Okay.
And then when you have people supporting you, how many hours are they taking off your plate? So you know like how many hours you actually have to execute for your clients on a monthly basis.
Okay. And then for like the family responsibilities, do you include like cooking dinner, getting everybody ready for school?
Yeah. I mean, I include that like grocery shopping, meal prep, meal planning, house cleaning, because what you'll see is as we map out your week, like where are you gonna put those things, right?
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I don't want to say your name wrong. Is it Jerry Lee? Am I saying that correct? And feel free to come off mute if you'd like. Or Kendi, do you have any questions? Jen, how about you? So Jerry Lee, am I saying that right? Oh, perfect. I always feel bad if I say people's names incorrectly, so I like that. Okay, are we ready to move on to the next stage?
No, can I have another minute?
Yeah, go for it. And drop an emoji or whatever you want in the chat whenever you're ready. Yeah, we'll slow it down. I'm just curious how everyone else is doing. Kendi's ready. going to create some categories on this next page, and this is dependent upon your life, right? And how you operate your business. So, for example, when I taught this in person, they were like, well, you spend a lot of time on like networking and all of that. And I was like, yeah, because what I'm doing in my business right now is building my product-based side of my business. So I'm meeting with a lot of people and retailers and all of that. If your business is really client work driven, then the amount of things in your client activities bucket is going to be a lot bigger. So some examples are CEO tasks. So this would be like invoicing, marketing, it could be creating new products or services. It could be having client calls, like when you're bringing on new clients. I'm trying to look the word, like sales calls, that's what it is, right? Client-based activities, so this is any client-based work, one-on-one, client calls, coaching, creating client deliverables, so if you're like a graphic designer, if you are delivering client design work, etc. Financial management, this would be like your bookkeeping and your reviewing of your financial statements, things like that. Networking and community building. For me, I have an entire day dedicated to that every week, where I schedule in-person meetings or Zoom chats with people, just continuing to like build brand awareness. For some people, volunteering is a really important part of why they're an entrepreneur. So where does that fit? Family responsibilities. And for some, meal prepping might fall under family responsibilities. For me, that's kind of a separate category because I've got a whole thing around food. So I need to know when I'm going to do my planning, grocery shopping, and prepping. And then what daily recurring tasks or habits do you want to build, right? So for me, I call this like my power hour in my business. It happens every single day. It might also be like personal wellness habits. Do you want to get into a situation where you're exercising daily? Or do you want to focus on drinking more water, going to bed earlier? What are those things that you want to make sure you're fitting in? And this doesn't have to look any kind of way. We'll make it prettier further down, but just kind of start lumping things together into categories that make sense for you. Okay, let me know when you're ready. Jen, how is this feeling so far as we're breaking it down? Is it kind of starting to come together? How's everybody doing? Quick pulse check. One more minute. All right. I'm going to jump to the next one. Evan, feel free to keep working on that while I talk about this. So has anybody heard about the 80-20 rule? That 20% of your efforts drive 80% of the results. You guys heard about that before? Yeah, okay. So this was something that as I started to focus on it, it has been dramatically shifting things for my business. So things to consider on the list that you've been creating. What is currently driving results for your business, right? And if you're in a business growth stage, think about things like what's helping you sign new clients. What is the way that you connect to people that actually convert, right? Where are you meeting your ideal clients? And those are the things you're going to want to spend 20% of your effort doing to continue building your business, right? If you're in a stage where your plate is full and you're just maintaining, okay, what do those tasks look like that help you maintain? And then what tasks do you have on your list that aren't actually doing much for you? So for example, for me, social media does not tend to be where I convert highly. I tend to convert more highly one-on-one or in person, or where I'm actually talking to people as opposed to like static posts on a social media feed. So I started putting a lot more of my effort and energy into building those connections, which is actually helping me build my business more. Does that make sense? So think about that, and then think about what is not actually bringing you results, and taking a good chunk of time. And if there's a lot that's not actually driving results, but is taking time, those are the things we can cut out, right? Or dramatically reduce. So it's not like using the social media example for me. It's not like I'm never on social media. I've just found a way to be on it in ways that are more effective, right? Like sharing in my stories and only posting static posts once a week, maybe. Although leading up to this, I was posting a lot more, marketing it. But that has really helped because then I can take that time and dedicate it to client work or to things that are actually driving my business. And then in what way can you do more of what is driving those results and less of what you're doing, right? And this is where we have to get clear on what is actually working. Where are our people? Where are we spending time that isn't actually, for example, I was in like some networking groups where like they just weren't my people. And I was like, why am I paying to be here? Like these aren't my people. So I left those networking groups, for example. Okay. So feel free to go through the list and kind of highlight or put stars next to things that are like the high priority. Another thing to consider here, if you are like a client service-based provider, does one-to-one, right? So where like 1 hour at a time, it's how you make money. Think about like if your plate is full with clients, how can you create space to sign more clients, to bring in more revenue? That's a goal for you, right? So what does that look like? Do you need to bring in support? Do you want to create an agency? Do you do some kind of like a group program? Are we all ready to move on to the next thing? Yes, through, move through. Yep. All right, so then we're going to move on to the next page, which is where we're going to break it out into actual days of the week. And one thing that I personally did for myself is each week or each day of the week had kind of like a theme, for example. So Mondays are my CEO days. They're when I do content or draft emails to my list or work on new products, or, like the CEO stuff. And then I have other days that are based on client work. I have other days that are for just networking, right? So what does that look like for you and how you can group things? Another thing to think about is how long do you want your work days to be and what days of the week do you want to be your work days? So I was just talking to one of my planner customers yesterday and she was like, yeah, Tuesdays and Thursdays I don't start working till 11 because I take the morning and my husband and I go out to brunch, and like she wants that flexibility to spend alone time with her husband, so she's structured her work week that way. So think about in that line at the top next to each day of the week, like what are your work hours for each day of the week? And I included Saturday and Sunday because I know some people work on weekends and take days off in the middle of their week, right? Like I've got a lot of planner customers that are real estate agents, so Saturday and Sunday are actually very busy work days for them. How many hours a week are you working? And then we're going to start translating the actual tasks that you do to each day. Okay, so evaluate. So Evan, for example, yeah, I do too, Jen. It's just that's why I created like Monday as my creative day. What was I going to say? I just lost my train of thought. Oh, so Evan, for example, you know how many hours a client work you're contracted for, break that down by number of weeks, right? Number of hours per week, and then how does that work for you, like, as it maps out across your week? How much time do you want to spend on business development and networking each week? Think about that. What does that look like for you? What does your business need, right? If your plate is full, it's less. If you are in active growth mode, obviously that would be more. And then one thing that has absolutely saved my brain as somebody with ADHD is scheduling meetings very strategically. So if I'm doing like an in-person coffee with somebody, I schedule at the start of my day or right before, like the last thing in my day before I have to go pick up my kids from school. Because if it's dead smack in the middle of my day, it completely disrupts my entire day, right? Or if I schedule it for like 10 a.m. when I usually start work at 9, I know that 9 to 10 o'clock hour is just going to be wasted time. So protect your work blocks and think about, is there one day of the week that you want just for meetings? So that your other days of the week can be heads down focused work. And especially for those of us with ADHD, this is super important because like Jen was saying, the transitions are hard on our brain. So how can you minimize that? And that's another reason why I recommend grouping common themed items together. Because if you're in creative mode, you can just crank on creative mode and not get interrupted. If you're on client work mode, you can just focus on client work and not get as interrupted. And it creates more productivity because you're not starting and stopping and having to get your brain back into that space again. Yep. Love that, Jen. Okay. And then make sure you're including the mundane and things that matter for your well-being. So if there's, like I said, for me, like my meal planning and grocery shopping, whatever, I know that every Sunday morning, that is what's happening. right? If there is, like a workout class you want to get to every week, make sure you make note of that. If there's something that you want to make sure you're doing daily or a habit that you want to implement, make sure you're adding that so you know when you're going to do it and you have time set aside for it. Because a lot of the times when we're trying to implement things that are just for us, we put it on our list, but we don't put it into our schedule, right? Or we steamroll over it in our schedule. So really protect those things, and then make sure you're leaving space, because things tend to take longer than you think they will. That's another aspect of ADHD, right? Like, we're not great at estimating time. So leave space in your calendar for that zap and to like not work, right? You've got to figure it out. Leave space for that so that you know that you're not getting behind on other things. Does that make sense? How are you guys doing with breaking it out into days of the week? Good. Love it. Is it feeling hard to break it out into days of the week, or is this feeling like, oh yeah, this makes sense? Enlightening. Well, and one thing that can come up is we can realize we are completely overburdened in terms of our time commitment, right? Like, oh, I only have this many hours a week to work, but I'm committed to clients like 10 hours over that. No wonder I constantly feel behind. No wonder I constantly feel like there's not enough time for me to do my invoicing or my bookkeeping or my, my marketing and signing new clients, right? Because I'm already overburdened. And then it's about figuring out, okay, what do we do from here? Okay, so let me know when you guys are ready to move on. I included a notes page here too, just in the event that you like need more space, or some people like to sort of like draw things visually. So if that's helpful for you, I'll have it available. I'm trying to look through the math and figure out what to fit where. I also find it helpful to remind you at this stage, you have all the time for the things that matter, right? So as you are filling this out, if you're feeling overwhelmed, like there's not enough time, remind yourself we've got to create priorities and structure. And if we've overburdened ourselves with our time, we can find a way to get back to baseline. So let me know if that's happening for you. And I just want to be respectful of your guys' time. I know we started a little bit late with the link issues, so I'm going to jump into the next slide, which is that we test and revise, right? We're never going to know just off the bat exactly what to do. We've got to experiment with it, so it's going to take a little time to finesse this. Your business might change, right? You can always adjust it. So test what you've created and then revise if you're noticing patterns that aren't working for you. So for example, if you've set aside a certain day to do like your CEO tasks, but that's a day when all of your clients want to have their client calls, you can always, adjust things, shift things around, etc. Nothing is ever set in stone. Right? So what now? The first thing that I recommend, so you've got your time management strategy, right? Like this is how we're going to manage our time. And the next component is being strategic with what you're actually doing day to day on a more micro level. And that's where the CST planner comes in. It's available now, although I only have shipping available in the United States. So for those of you in the US, if you would like to purchase a planner, you can do so at the QR code on your screen. I call it a planning system. I know Evan has used it. She can speak to it if she feels comfortable. But it's more of a system. It's more of a system versus a traditional like weekly planner. So it walks you through evaluating what's going well, and then you move into a brain dump, just like we did here. Like get all of the things out that are on your brain that you need to do. That you need to do, and prioritize a very similar structure to what we did for our time management strategy. And then we move into planning out your week. How you can see that. But it includes your whole life. Everything that I do is about business and life merged together because our whole life is our whole life, right? So you've got your meal plan, you've got celebrating your weekly wins and your priorities for the week. And then it's also a daily plan. And the reason this is important is for those of us who have ADHD, it is important we have things visually remind us. So you've got your habit tracker on the daily, you've got your visual scheduler so you can see how time is actually mapping out visually. You've got your to-do list, your daily meals, you remember to eat and you remember to think about what you're going to eat so you don't end up at lunchtime like, I don't have anything in that to eat right now. And then it's also your mindset work, your gratitude, your daily affirmations. It's everything in one place, and that's what I absolutely love about it and why I created it, because I was sick of carrying around like 4 different notebooks every day with all these things in separate places. So if you'd like a copy and you're in the United States, you can grab one with that QR code. The other thing that people find really helpful is the Project Planner workbook, which is a printable download, so just like this time management strategy, and it helps you move through a similar process to break out your projects. And you can print as many times as you want, right? So every time you have a new project, and this is my like little hack that I use every time I'm like, I have this thing to do, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Print it out, map it out, and then I know exactly what I need to do. Or if you are looking for done for you support, so this would be like project planning sessions or one-on-one coaching, or if you need support within your business from a project manager, happy to jump on a call with you and see what that could look like if we're a good fit to work together. So any questions on any of those, or you know what, I actually moved really fast. Does anybody still need it? Let me know if you are good. We're looking at call.